Hello, everyone. Welcome to Breadcrumb. This is a podcast about the clues left by success and failure. I'm your host, Mary Galkowski, and today we are joined by the one and only Jessica Yarmey, founder and CEO of Sizzle Society. Jessica, it's so good to see you and have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to dig into all things franchise marketing with you.
Amazing. Well, yes, happy Friday too. Do you have any fun weekend plans? I'm so excited. It's Friday.
Just sitting at my computer doing work for my clients. Full agency mode over here.
I love it. That's so great. Well, Jessica, would love to learn more about you, more about your franchising experience, franchise trends. And I know you have a lot of experience in the marketing world, so would love to hear some marketing insights from you that you have to share with us today.
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of my background because I've been a marketer my whole career. Yeah. And I won't give you the full age at this point, but it's been a long time in marketing. And I started in franchise marketing specifically back in 2008, working on the Burger King business, and got a deep dive into franchise marketing with Burger King just because of how they're structured with their regional support within their marketing world and number of different agencies in the mix. And it's really as complicated as you can get of a marketing support structure. So to really dive into the deep end with Burger King, that really kicked off my niche of playing in the franchise marketing space. I got into franchise marketing in the fitness space in 2012 when I started to work for Gold's Gym. And so that really just helped overlap this expertise of franchise marketing with a passion of fitness and just a love of franchising in general. And that really kind of exploded things for me for my career and just opened up a lot of different opportunities. And I'm so grateful to be able to play in an industry that I love with clients that I love on brands that I am actually a consumer of. And I really encourage anybody who's at all interested in the franchising world to just look into it in terms of how you can build and carve your own career in this space, because there's so many different ways to get to something that makes sense for you in franchising.
Absolutely. And I love that answer too. It's so true. At least for myself, I can definitely resonate with that. Just being on the marketing side too of franchising, on the supplier side. I jumped into franchising pretty quickly out of college and I love it so much. I never want to do anything else. It's just such a great industry. Everyone is so connected. I mean, the teams that you work with, the people that you meet, it's just, you can't beat it. It's the best.
Yeah, I was at an IFA event last night and I was having this exact conversation with Emily George, who works at the IFA. And we were just saying how people come into franchising and they really don't leave. Right. There's no reason to leave. You're kind of in this very niche skill set in a niche business model. And once you understand it, it really is just such a superpower. And it's a people-based superpower too. Yeah. And so to be in rooms of people that maybe have jumped between roles but still remain in this community is just so fun to see. And years later, kind of running into the same people and doing business with the same people, all because of the franchising business model is just amazing. And from a marketing perspective, it is so unique and different that once you are in the franchise marketing world, it really is difficult to leave because you just see so much power and strength on the franchise marketing side that's really hard to generate on the corporate marketing side.
Definitely, yes. And that is something I wanted to talk about too, just from a marketing standpoint with marketing strategy specific to franchising. Jessica, what would you say are the key elements of a successful marketing strategy for franchise brands in today's digital landscape?
Yeah, marketing strategy for franchise brands really needs to be collaborative with franchise owners first and foremost. The greatest power that you can generate in franchise marketing is to have everybody aligned around what you're doing, even if it's in a digital space, which a lot of digital starts to kind of happen in the background and you don't necessarily see it every single day. It's not as in your face as some other marketing channels, maybe like a social media channel would be, but it still is important to have your franchisees on board with what you're building and why. And so always having that cadence of here's what we're planning strategically, here's what we expect it to do, and then closing that loop and saying, and here's what it actually did, and then start that same loop again. Here's what we're planning next. Here's what, here's what it's going to look like. Here's how it's going to impact your day-to-day operations. And I think franchisees like to be included in the process, especially on the marketing side, because it's the funnest part of the business, let's be honest. And so as people like to be included in it, and just having transparency and visibility into the what and the why is always a good place to start strategically when you're building on the marketing side.
Definitely. And Jessica, how do you strike the right balance between maintaining brand consistency and giving franchisees that flexibility to really cater to local markets?
So right now with my agency, Sizzle Society, I work with a lot of young brands, and I try to impress this upon them early on. The faster you can set guardrails around your brand, the better you're going to do in terms of having franchisees that want to play a marketing game with you, but also don't swerve too far out of the lines. And so your guardrails could be around a brand standard book. That's somewhat of the cleanest example of a guardrail, but it also can be around, like, how do we engage with each other? What are the things that I'm going to want to see and approve before it goes out? What are the things that are fast, where, like, if you stay in brand standard, if you stay in brand voice, you can run, you can roll. And I think that's an evolution that happens and gets better and better as a brand grows. But the earlier you can set and say, like, here's where you can run full speed ahead, and here's where you have to check in, and here's where you can't play at all because it doesn't make sense for our brand. The faster you can put those guardrails up, the earlier in your brand's lifespan that you can put those guardrails up, the better you're going to be as a unified brand presence across all marketing channels.
100%. And, with marketing channels, and there's so much adaptation that it takes with trends. So I was just going to ask you too, what recent trends in franchise marketing have you found most impactful, and how are you adapting to those trends? Or are you seeing any new trends that are even coming up in 2025 and beyond?
I think social media and content on social media continues to be the biggest trend. Where I'm seeing brands succeed is where they are closing the loop between pushing out a lot of content organically, but then closing the loop with their paid creative. And so pulling the best pieces of organic and letting it fuel the paid side of campaigns. It's amazing that there's brands, and you can look at this in the Facebook ad library. There's brands still to this day that run Facebook campaigns with static marketing speak images only. And the most effective ad campaigns are video, are user-generated video, are user-generated video, not necessarily with trending audio. And the way you get to that, or the way that you learn that or understand that, is just by testing and putting a lot of different creative out into the marketplace, and you see what people resonate with organically. And then once you see something pop organically, put that into your paid campaigns immediately. So a really good Facebook campaign strategy these days has 30 different ad sets, and I would say 90% of them are attached to video creative, as opposed to what you would traditionally think of a static Facebook ad with headline and logo in the bottom right corner. That's really just not what paid digital media looks like anymore. And that's really been an evolution over the last 2 years. But the brands that are doing it well are just riding the effectiveness of the paid social media advertising. And the brands that aren't doing it well are playing a game of, like, how much more money can we carve to dump into paid media advertising, as opposed to just running your campaigns so that a cost per lead is low so that your impression numbers are high with a lower ad spend. I think that's the biggest trend that's happening right now. And it's an easy and inexpensive trend to play with. You don't need a high production budget. You don't need a high media budget. It really is it's a trend that's driven by hard work, and it's a trend that's driven by watching the results of what you're doing. But if you are willing to do the work around having multiple pieces of creative and then watch what those multiple pieces of creative do and leverage them with vendor partners who are running campaigns, it's a super effective and reasonable trend to jump on right now. And for whatever reason, like some brands are really playing that game well, and some brands are sitting it out.
Yeah, it's so true about what you said about video. I mean, video is really everything right now. And, for a while it was the short form content, and now kind of long form content's coming back too with video, which is really interesting. But I wanted to ask you too, do you see a significant difference in, let's say, Sizzle Society posts organically on their page versus if you were to post and each other repost? So let's say you post, just an organic like fact about Sizzle Society on your page, and then Sizzle Society reposts it, versus Sizzle Society posting it and you reposting it. Do you see more engagement from one or the other?
1000%. I started out by telling you, like, I'm ancient in the marketing world, and I've been online building my personal brand, building relationships for 25 years now, and so like there's so much that's built up with that, reputation wise and connection wise. And so my best flow is to post on my own personal pages and then engage with my personal page via my business pages, as opposed to if my business posts something and I engage with my business post. So my business is very much driven and attached to my own personal brand at this point, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I think it's a good thing from a standpoint of I can launch a business on top of my personal brand, and that's I'm so grateful that I have had the career that I'm able to do that. But then from a negative, like, I want my business to be bigger than just me. So I do need to have my business pages start to grow, and I need other voices to really start to weave in with mine on my own business pages. So I do still post organically and natively to my personal pages as well as to my business pages. But to answer your question, the posts that do better start natively on my own personal pages right now. And maybe in 2 years, when we have a recap conversation, it will be the opposite. And that would be my goal, is to be less the center of my business and more a puppeteer within my business. But for right now, I'm very much like, my business is kind of powered by my own personal brand.
That's great. Yeah, I've seen that too. So I wanted to ask you and see what your opinion was there. That's so interesting. Do you see any marketing challenges franchisees face when it comes to social media?
I see challenges, and I also see opportunities. Coming from a Club Pilates system, which has hundreds of owners and hundreds of social pages, where you can have immediately access to hundreds of people who are cheering for you and rooting for your content and liking and commenting on your content. I think there's such an opportunity to grow brands quickly in the franchise world. I think there's always a challenge of, there are so many channels, and then you have so many locations. And so even working with Body Bar right now, where they're at 50 locations, it's still 50 locations times a Facebook page, times an Instagram page, times, in some instances, a YouTube environment. And so there's so many different environments that you have to maintain and manage, and it all needs to stay consistent, and it all needs to stay up to date. And And I think that's a real phase that small brands go through is we are so big now, we can't make these updates manually. Franchise owner changes their phone number. Oh my God. It's like the biggest challenge, and it shouldn't be, right? But it's so many different places that it has to change. And so I think there is a place or a time when small brands kind of hit that pain point where they have to grow up and say, in order to thrive through these obstacles, like, we need a stronger digital infrastructure that's built for franchise brands. It's built for enterprise level control, but also individual level location control. Like, it has that duality to it. It can be both big and top line visible, but then it also can be very granular and single location visible. And I see that usually being like a 25 location mark, sometimes 50 location mark, where brands just have to make those kind of difficult decisions to level up their digital infrastructure.
In addition to that too, can you share any insights on how franchise brands can, really better equip their franchisees with localized marketing tools and resources too?
There's so many great tools out there that are now, I don't want to say catering to the franchising world, but can really be used to cater to the franchise world. If you think specifically about creative, the ability that we have now in Canva to build templates and to give local owners access across an entire franchise system to those templates, it has that ability to be big and enterprise level controlled, but then also be small and be single location controlled as well. It has that duality. And when I started in my franchise marketing career, even through October of 2017, when I joined Club Pilates, we still did a lot of creative through local creative request forms. And maybe there's still a need for that, for very specific things.
Sure.
But for generalized things, a lot of that right now is flowing through tools like a Canva that give owners control, but also have those guardrails up to say you can't go too far outside of the lines. You can't change the colors. You can't change the fonts. Like, you're almost set up to succeed as opposed to set up to fail whenever you just open up a Word doc and start to build a template for an event. So I think it's getting very fun in the franchise space because there are so many tools that play that game of like really big brand level control, but then also really small individual franchise owner control.
Absolutely. And when you said Canva, my eyes lit up. I love Canva. I play in Canva every day. And I say play because I don't consider it work. It is so fun to me. I love to design. I love creative. So it's so fun. And I love that you can have a customized brand kit in there. So you have all your fonts, you have all your colors, your hex codes, all your image and your assets are in there. So it does definitely make that easier for franchisees, I hope.
Yeah, it's such an amazing tool. And I really, because of my age and my upbringing, I'm an Adobe girl, like, to my core. And I grew up like on Adobe, but to have a tool that's that collaborative and has that kind of like permission level, that's big enterprise, goes down to small single studio. You can't beat that kind of structure for a franchise brand. So I think it's exciting to have tools like that are enabling or empowering the intense content needs that are out there right now for studios to kind of keep up with. So I'm a big fan of Canva now. I'm kind of evolving in that regard. But I do think it's just another example of how small brands they just hit a place where they need to grow up and they need to build their brand kit out in Canva. They need to kind of make those decisions of like, what's going to be our tech stack going forward. I hate that term because I think it's unintentionally, intimidating and it shouldn't be. It's just like, what tools are we agreeing that provide value to our franchise owners, and let's build those centrally so that the owners have everything that they need to be successful.
Definitely. And Jessica, I'm going to pivot to marketing budget allocation, talking about all these different tools. How would you say franchise brands should allocate their marketing budget between corporate level initiatives and supporting local franchisee marketing efforts such as Canva, etc.?
I always aim to have 50% of my national marketing budget going toward national media.
Okay.
And the reason being, when it gets to convention time and you're standing up in front of the room, I'd like to be able to point to that number and say, like, you contributed in, and here's what I contributed right back out. And it's really a direct line in their minds of dollars in to leads out to their studios. And I would attach national referral codes to everything that I was doing from a national media perspective. I do think franchisors have an obligation to build tools at the corporate level that power a super smart website, that power a site that can be easily searched and ranked in local SEO as well as national SEO. You have to now offer tools like Canva. You have to do all of those things, but you can't do so at the expense of not having a national presence on social media specifically. Maybe it's pay-per-click, but usually it's something national on social media to provide brand level air cover so that franchisees with their local ad spend can be very focused on low funnel converting campaigns as opposed to brand awareness, welcome to the neighborhood campaigns. Let's get people like converted through the funnel with those local dollars, because they want to see their local dollars do, dollars in versus leads out, dollars in versus memberships sold out. So I think budget allocation is huge. And in some instances, you have to be creative. In some instances, you have to work with vendor partners to structure things so that it's tiered. So we're at this many locations now, but we know we're going to be at this many locations next year. And I think a lot of the vendors who play in this space know the game of building a franchise, and they know how fast it can move and how fast the quantity of locations can increase. So I have seen vendors be very willing to be creative with how to structure agreements so that it can get an early stage brand in and partnered early so that they can build it together for the long haul and not have a painful transition once a concept's at 100 locations. It's the worst to try to move a concept when it's at 100 locations. You kind of want to make big moves when you're at 20 locations, when you're at 30 locations. It's manageable at that point. But a lot of brands wait to make those big moves until they have more locations contributing into the National Marketing Fund. And I think that's just a miss. I think it's a little bit of maybe budget mismanagement, but then also just a lack of working hand in hand with your vendor partners to put a deal together that's going to benefit the brand now and then allow the brand to grow with that vendor partner.
Definitely. And do you see, so we talked about the budgeting allocation, we talked about these marketing efforts. How is emerging technology such as AI and automation, how is that influencing some of those marketing efforts? And does that change anything with the budget allocation?
A lot of the AI tools that I'm seeing come out are almost attaching or being attached to existing platforms. So social media schedulers then have an AI copywriter capability that can make the social content build a little bit easier. So I see AI more like it allows you to do more with less. It doesn't necessarily change the dollars that you're going to be allocating to different lines.
Agree.
It just maybe makes you more productive within the different lines. But certainly AI impacts marketing probably more than any other function of a business because of the content needs that are out there that we already talked about. It's like a primary trend is like content is everything. So to have a tool like AI, whether it's an AI video editor, whether it's an AI copywriter, whether it's AI show note writer, like you're going to use to do the show notes for this show, all of that is, it's just meant to make you more efficient. It doesn't necessarily mean you get to magically spend less money on a social media scheduler. Like you still need to pay for the scheduler. It just is a more efficient scheduler and allows you to, schedule out more posts in less amount of time.
For sure. And have you seen any like influence when it comes to AI within franchise marketing efforts influencing, specifically lead generation and customer engagement at all?
I think it's huge. I think automation is a very real part of every brand's sales strategy or engagement strategy, especially early on. There's real data around the faster you can connect with a lead when they fill out a form, the more likely that person is to convert. And so using AI to power early automations, even if it is just a quick touch to say, like, thanks so much for your interest in our brand, someone's going to be reaching out to you soon. Like those kind of very fast automations, or the ability to get information via chat, even if it's after hours, like those are very real value adds, especially to consumers who don't necessarily want to talk to a person anymore. So I think we're going to continue to see AI be ingrained in automations. There still needs to be a people element at this point. I do still believe in the power of phone calls, but I think it's like a balancing act right now. Like, why not use that technology to power very fast initial communications, and then make your phone call communications even that much more efficient and richer in their starting place, because you've already collected so much information up front. So I think we're at a place where it is AI enhanced. It's not powered by AI, marketing nor the sales process. It's simply AI enhanced. We will get to a point where it's AI powered, but we're not there yet by any means.
Agree. I always say it's a tool, not a replacement.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where we're at now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jessica, what key metrics would you say franchise brands should focus on to measure the success of their marketing efforts, both at the corporate and the franchisee level?
I'll speak specifically to fitness just because that's my lane right now. And I do think brands, regardless of industry, we can get twisted in our numbers. We can get analysis paralysis. And if we at the corporate level have analysis paralysis, we will pass that analysis paralysis down to our franchise owner partners. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it is just keeping it simple. And I would, of course, look at all the numbers on my side at the corporate level, but the numbers that I would pass along and report back to franchise owners would be leads per studio per month, a booking rate per studio per month, a conversion rate per studio per month, and like an all-in percentage of leads coming from national sources. Going back to our budget conversation, like showing them, like, here's my piece of the puzzle that I'm paying for out of the National Marketing Fund. But I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that. Mm-hmm. We still are at a place from a marketing conversation where we talk about multi-touch attribution. None of that matters to a franchise owner, and it still isn't clean even at the franchisor level. So even if you have a BI tool, even if you have like the greatest reporting of all time, you can still have a muddy multi-touch attribution. So like yes, look at that kind of information and try to learn from it. But when you're reporting to the franchise owners, keep it to 5 numbers max. If you can get it down to 4, that's even better, because then they're going to be focused on those 4 numbers. And those 4 numbers they kind of are driven also by other things, like how fast you pick up the phone and call, like they kind of encompass other things that are happening in your overall operation. But you're giving them like, what are the most important things to look at every day? And then therefore that's what they're going to look at. And then that's what their teams are going to look at. So I think keeping it simple in the numbers and in the reporting. And then if you keep it, if you need to look at more detail, look at that detail at the franchisor level, and don't necessarily pass like that chaos along.
I love that answer. Thank you. All right, getting a little deeper here. What does failure mean to you, and how has failure left breadcrumbs in your journey or your career for the better?
Failure is everything. And I think we grow up in school systems that really encourage, us to not fail, and you need to get A's and, do it at all costs. And even if you need to cheat, like you have to win, you have to get good grades. And I think the reality once you graduate is you need to have a complete mindset shift of the faster I can fall flat on my face and be good with it, the faster I'm going to be able to get back up and take a risk again, but a more educated risk. And I think, failure ends up freezing a lot of us. And whether that's like our upbringing or whether it's the school system or what have you, it pauses, it makes us stop as if we're at a red light. And sometimes it makes us turn the car around and go in the opposite direction. The reality is failure is a green light, go. It means you're learning. It means you took a risk, you grew because of it, you learned something because of it. Now you're better equipped to better perform the next time. So I'm a big fan of failure, and I would say I'm the queen of failure in a lot of different ways. I have a lot of very public fails in my social media history that you can go back and look at. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's something to just realize is part of any career, let alone any entrepreneurial career. And the faster you get good with it, and the faster you can just realize it's all part of the journey, it's part of pushing to your limits, it's part of growing as a professional, the faster you are going to hit that next level.
That was lovely. Thank you for that. It's so true. Failure is everything, and you can only grow from it. That's my thoughts on that for sure. All right. Jessica, I want to hear a little bit more about you in addition to your career and your experience. Tell me about your hobbies. What are your interests? What is, what do you do on a day off of work?
I don't have a very good answer for this question because I don't have a lot of days where I don't work. I really love what I do. Yeah. There's a lot of studies that are coming out right now around burnout. And instead of answering your question directly, I'm going to answer it indirectly and just get on a little bit of a soapbox around like the times that I've felt most burned out in my career. It was not because I was working too hard. It was because I was working too hard at things that didn't set my soul on fire. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to this, if you're listening to this kind of podcast, you have a drive about you. You have like the desire to improve in your career, advance in your career. When you hit a place that you are feeling burned out, it doesn't necessarily mean take your foot off the gas. It means evaluate like what direction you're going in. And I have been very lucky to be able to find a direction that I feel is my hobby. Like I truly feel like my work is what I do for fun. Maybe like I would say my hobby is I put more time toward my personal brand if I'm in hobby mode as opposed to work mode. if I'm in work mode, I'm doing a lot of things for my clients. But this is my life. This is my world. And I put a lot of hours toward my work, and it doesn't hit a place of burnout because it feels like it's fun. And my interests are the things that I do with my work. Like, I love fitness. I work out every day. I go for walks every day. Like, I'm into health and wellness things. And oh, by the way, that's also what I do for work. And and so I think, like, the faster you can make those overlaps in your career, and it doesn't necessarily mean like you have to, but I think for driven people, you have to, because if you're driving toward something that you don't love, you are going to hit a place of burnout. You're going to hit a place of mental muddiness, and no one wants to be there. So if you're a driven individual and you're asked that question, what are your hobbies? What are your interests? Write down your hobbies, write down your interests, and build your career as close to as many of those things as you can. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to do that. And I'm so passionate about trying to unlock that for other people, because when you can work in things that you love, every day you're playing in your hobbies. Every day you're pursuing things that you're interested in. And how freeing is that, to not have a pressure to perform and achieve. Like, the pressure that I feel is just to, like, play in what I'm great at and to get better every day at that. And wherever that takes me, I'm going to have fun doing it. And there's not necessarily like a goal attached to that. There's really just the process. And the process is playing in things that I love.
That was such a beautiful answer. I am genuinely so moved by that. That was incredible. Thank you so much for doing that.
It comes with time, and I would just encourage everyone who's listening, who's your age or younger, like, the faster you can get to it, like, get to it, even if it means taking like dollar steps back or taking like a lower title just to get into something, just to work in a world that you love to be in. It really is. It's freeing, and it's happier even when you're working your tail off.
That's incredible. Oh, well, Jessica, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Thank you so much for your time today, explaining all about your franchise journey and your incredible experience too. It's been an absolute pleasure having you today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat with you.
You as well. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and please stay tuned for more episodes coming soon on Breadcrumb.